Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty and watched the stars through the main screen. The year was 2387, and humanity had finally cracked the secret of faster-than-light travel just 20 years ago. Now they were out here, among the stars, looking for new worlds and new friends. Jake was 35 years old with brown hair and calm blue eyes that had seen many strange things in space, but always stayed curious about what came next. The Liberty was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was tough and reliable. It measured about 300 meters long and carried a crew of 42 people. The hull was gray metal with blue stripes along the sides and the Earth flag painted near the nose. Inside the ship, everything was built for function over beauty, with wide corridors and rooms that could be changed for different missions. Lisa Martinez sat at the tactical station running checks on the ship's weapons and shields. She was 28, with black hair tied back in a ponytail and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Lisa had grown up on Mars, where her family worked in the mining colonies. She knew how to fix almost anything and could shoot straighter than most people could think. At the engineering station, Pete Johnson monitored the ship's systems with the focus of someone who truly loved machines. Pete was 31 with red hair and freckles that made him look younger than he was. He had built his first engine when he was 12 and had been making impossible things work ever since. The other crew members often joked that Pete could make a toaster fly if he really wanted to. Amy Davis handled communications from her station near the front of the bridge. She was 26 with blonde hair and a smile that could make even the grumpiest alien feel welcome. Amy spoke 17 different languages and had a gift for understanding what people really meant, even when they said something else entirely. They were currently exploring the Kepler 442 system, looking for planets that might support life. The system had 3 planets and an asteroid belt that sparkled with mineral deposits. Jake had ordered a standard survey pattern to map everything and check for any signs of civilization. "Captain, I'm getting something strange on long-range sensors," Lisa said while studying her displays. 3 large objects approaching from the outer system. They're moving fast and they don't match any known ship designs. Jake moved to stand behind Lisa's chair to look at the sensor readings. The objects were definitely artificial, and each one was about twice the size of the Liberty. Their energy signatures were unlike anything in the human databases. "Any response to our standard greeting signals, Amy?" Jake asked. "Nothing yet, Captain, but I'm detecting some kind of scanning beam focused on us. Someone is definitely taking a very close look at our ship," Amy replied while adjusting her equipment. "Red alert, all hands to stations," Jake announced over the ship's communication system. Throughout, the Liberty crew members dropped what they were doing and rushed to their emergency positions. Jake had learned long ago that it was better to be ready and not need it than to be surprised by hostile aliens. The 3 unknown ships came into visual range and appeared on the main screen. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. The ships were beautiful in an alien way that human minds could barely understand. They looked more grown than built, with smooth curves that flowed like water frozen in time. The hulls seemed to shift, color from deep blue to purple to green as they moved. Each ship was covered in what looked like living metal that pulsed with soft light. "Those are definitely not human ships," Pete said with wonder in his voice. "Look at the way they move. No thrust signatures that I can detect. They're using some kind of technology we've never seen before." "Incoming transmission, Captain," Amy announced. "They're using a universal translator protocol, audio and visual." "Put it on screen, Amy," Jake ordered. The main display changed to show the bridge of one of the alien ships. The being that appeared was tall and elegant with pale blue skin and large dark eyes. He wore what looked like a uniform made of the same flowing material as his ship. When he spoke, his voice was smooth and cold like winter wind. "I am Admiral Vextar Krinoth of the Zephyrian Empire. You primitive creatures have entered space that belongs to the Empire. Your crude metal vessel will submit to inspection, and your crew will prepare for processing as new subjects of the Empire." Jake stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I'm Captain Jake Sullivan of the Earthship Liberty. We come in peace and mean no harm to you or your empire. We're explorers looking for new friends among the stars. Perhaps we could arrange a diplomatic meeting to discuss this situation." Admiral Krinoth's expression showed clear disgust as he looked at Jake and the human bridge. "Diplomacy is for equals. Little creature. You fly in a primitive metal contraption that barely deserves to be called a ship. Your technology is thousands of years behind ours. The Zephyrian Empire has ruled this sector of space for over 3,000 years. We have never been defeated in battle. I can see your ships are very impressive, Admiral, Jake said, keeping his voice calm and friendly. But we're not looking for trouble. Surely there's room in this big galaxy for all of us to get along. There is room for servants and subjects, Krynoth replied. Since you seem reluctant to accept your proper place, I will demonstrate the futility of resistance. I challenge your pathetic vessel to combat against 3 of our destroyers. When you are defeated, you will surrender unconditionally to the Empire. Lisa whispered urgently to Jake. Captain, those ships are much larger than us and their energy. Readings are off the charts. We should try to run. Jake looked at his crew and saw concern in their faces, but also trust in their eyes. They would follow him into whatever came next because they knew he would never risk their lives without good reason. Jake had spent years learning about human nature, and he knew something about his species that this arrogant alien admiral had probably never encountered. Admiral Krynoth, Jake said with a slight smile starting to form on his face. I accept your challenge. When do we start? The alien admiral's eyes widened slightly as if he had not expected such a quick acceptance. You accept. Very well. Combat will commence in 1 standard hour at the asteroid field near the 4th planet. Prepare to learn your place in the order of things. The transmission ended, and the main screen returned to showing the 3 alien ships as they moved toward the asteroid field. Jake turned to face his crew and saw the questions in their eyes. Captain, Pete said carefully, those ships have energy outputs that could probably vaporize us in seconds. Are you sure about this? Pete, Jake said with his smile growing wider. How long would it take you to implement the modifications we've been working on? The ones from the Project Chaos files. Pete's eyes lit up with sudden understanding. About 45 minutes if Lisa helps with the tactical systems. Amy, start transmitting our action report to Earth Command. Tell them we've made contact with a galactic empire and we're about to show them what humans do best, Jake ordered. What's the captain? Amy asked. We're going to turn their whole understanding of warfare completely upside down, Jake replied. And we're going to have fun doing it. The asteroid field around Kepler 442b stretched out like a frozen ocean of rock and metal. Thousands of chunks of stone and iron tumbled slowly through space, creating a maze that would challenge even the best pilots. The Liberty moved carefully between the larger asteroids while Pete Johnson worked frantically in the engineering sections to prepare their surprises. Admiral Krynoth's 3 destroyers approached the field with elegant grace. Each ship was over 600 meters long with hulls that seemed to breathe and pulse with inner light. The Zephyrian vessels moved through space like living creatures swimming through water. Their bioplasma weapons charged with an ominous green glow that made the nearby asteroids look pale and dead. Jake stood on the bridge watching the enemy ships position themselves. Pete, how are those modifications coming along? He called toward the engineering station. Almost done, Captain, Pete replied while his hands flew over multiple control panels. The Liberty is about to become something the galaxy has never seen before. Lisa, I need you to reroute power from the backup life support systems to the tactical grid. Lisa's fingers danced across her controls as she followed Pete's instructions. Power transfer complete. All weapon systems are showing green across the board. Captain, these energy readings are completely insane. We're operating way outside normal safety limits. Amy, start broadcasting our music selection on all frequencies, Jake ordered with a grin. Let's give our new friends a proper introduction to human culture. Amy activated the communication system and suddenly the space around the Liberty filled with the driving beat of classic rock music. The opening chords of Welcome to the Jungle echoed across the radio spectrum as the human ship prepared for battle. Admiral Krynoth's voice crackled over the communication channel, sounding confused and irritated. What is this noise you are transmitting? Cease this distraction immediately. Sorry, Admiral, Jake replied cheerfully. That's just our warm-up music. We humans like to have a good soundtrack when we're working. You might want to pay attention, though, because the real show is about to start. The 3 Zephyrian destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Brilliant green bolts of bioplasma energy streaked across space toward the Liberty, with enough power to melt through a small moon. The elegant alien weapons had been perfected over thousands of years and had never failed to destroy their targets. But the Liberty was no longer where the weapons were aimed. Jake had ordered evasive maneuvers at the last possible second, and the human ship dove between two large asteroids as the plasma bolts passed harmlessly through empty space. The Zephyrian targeting systems had calculated the perfect firing solution, but they had never encountered a ship that could change direction so quickly. "Chaff and flares, Lisa," Jake ordered as the Liberty spun end over end through the asteroid field. "Let's see how their fancy sensors handle a little confusion." Lisa triggered the defensive systems that Pete had modified during their preparation time. Clouds of metallic debris exploded from the Liberty's hull, creating a glittering fog that reflected sensor beams in every direction. Emergency flares burned bright with false heat signatures that made it impossible to tell where the real ship was hiding. The Zephyrian destroyers fired again, but their elegant biosensors were completely confused by the primitive countermeasures. Their plasma bolts struck asteroids in empty space while the Liberty danced through the chaos like it was performing a carefully choreographed ballet. "Pete, I need more power to the engines," Jake called out as the ship shook from a near miss. "Already. On it, Captain," Pete replied while sweat beaded on his forehead. "I've got the fusion reactors running at 127% capacity. The safety systems are screaming at me, but the engines are holding together." Admiral Krynoth watched in growing disbelief as his perfect weapons continued to miss their target. The human ship should have been destroyed within the first few seconds of combat, but instead, it seemed to be enjoying itself. The primitive vessel was performing maneuvers that should have torn it apart, yet somehow it remained intact and apparently undamaged. "How are they doing this?" Krynoth demanded of his tactical officer. "Our weapons have never missed a target before." "Admiral, their ship appears to be designed for maximum maneuverability rather than protection or firepower," the officer replied. "They are using the asteroids as cover, and their countermeasures are interfering with our targeting systems." Lisa activated another of Pete's modifications, and suddenly the Liberty's hull bristled with small rapid-firing weapons. Kinetic projectiles streaked toward the Zephyrian ships, not trying to penetrate their advanced armor, but targeting their sensor arrays and weapon systems with surgical precision. "What kind of weapons are those?" Admiral Krynoth asked as sparks flew from damaged systems throughout his flagship. "They're shooting pieces of metal at us," his tactical officer replied in confusion. "Simple kinetic projectiles with no energy signature. Our shields are designed to stop plasma and energy weapons. These primitive bullets are passing right through." Jake ordered another impossible maneuver, and the Liberty used its exhaust as a weapon by venting superheated plasma directly at one of the pursuing destroyers. The Zephyrian ship's elegant bioarmor was not designed to handle direct contact with fusion fire, and large sections of its hull began to overheat and shut down. "Captain, they're trying to surround us," Lisa reported as she tracked the enemy ships on her displays. "2 destroyers are moving to flank our position." "Perfect," Jake replied with satisfaction. "Pete, are you ready to show them our special modification?" "Absolutely, Captain," Pete said while his hands moved to a set of controls that had been installed just hours before. "Initiating Protocol Yankee on your command." Jake watched as the Zephyrian ships moved into what they thought was an ideal attack position. Their bioplasma weapons charged to full power as they prepared to finish the annoying human vessel once and for all. "Execute Protocol Yankee," Jake ordered. The Liberty suddenly came apart. Admiral Krynoth stared in shock as the human ship split into 3 separate sections. The command module continued to maneuver through the asteroids while the engineering section broke away and began moving independently. The weapons platform detached from the main hull and immediately started targeting the confused Zephyrian destroyers with devastating accuracy. "How is this possible?" Krynoth whispered as he watched the 3 sections of the Liberty coordinate their movements like a pack of hunting animals. "Ships cannot simply divide themselves during combat. Admiral, the humans appear to have built their vessel as a modular system," his science officer reported. "Each section has independent life support and propulsion. They can operate as separate ships or combine into a single unit." The 3 sections of the Liberty began their attack in earnest. Lisa's weapons platform picked off Zephyrian systems with careful precision, while Pete's engineering section used industrial tools as improvised weapons. Jake's command module continued to broadcast rock music while coordinating the battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. The elegant Zephyrian destroyers found themselves completely outmatched by an enemy that refused to fight according to any known rules of warfare. Admiral Krenoth gripped the arms of his command chair as he watched his 3 destroyers struggle against what had once been a single human ship. The 3 sections of the Liberty moved through the asteroid field like they were performing an ancient dance that only they knew the steps to. Each module stayed in perfect coordination with the others, while maintaining independent movement that made targeting almost impossible. Lisa's weapons platform spun lazily through space while her guns picked apart the Zephyrian shield generators with mathematical precision. She had studied the enemy ships during their approach and identified 17 critical weak points in their bio-armor systems. Now she was systematically destroying each target while humming along to the rock music that still blasted from Amy's communication arrays. Target their main sensor cluster. Jake's voice came through the tactical channel from his command module. If they can't see us clearly, they can't coordinate their attacks. Already on it, Captain Lisa replied while she lined up her next shot. These aliens built their ships like works of art, but they forgot that pretty things break easily when you hit them in the right spots. Pete's engineering module had found a completely different way to cause problems for the Zephyrian fleet. He was using the ship's industrial equipment as weapons in ways that no military academy had ever taught. The mining laser that was meant for asteroid surveys now sliced through alien armor plating like it was cutting through butter. The magnetic grapples designed for cargo handling were being used to grab chunks of space rock and fling them at enemy ships. Admiral, the tactical officer on Krenoth's flagship reported with growing panic in his voice. The humans are using construction tools as weapons. They just carved something into our port armor section. Krenoth looked at the damage display and felt his blood pressure rise. The humans had used their mining laser to burn a crude drawing into the side of his destroyer. It looked like a round face with 2 dots for eyes and a curved line for a mouth. Even worse, the face appeared to be winking at them. They drew a face on my ship, Krenoth said in disbelief. These primitive creatures are making jokes while fighting a battle. Amy's communication module continued to broadcast human music across every frequency the Zephyrians were using. She had switched from rock music to something called heavy metal, and the driving rhythms seemed to match perfectly with the chaotic battle happening around them. But between songs, she was also transmitting something else that was driving the alien crews to distraction. "What is that horrible sound they keep making?" one of the Zephyrian pilots asked over the fleet communication channel. "I believe it is called laughter," Krenoth's science officer replied after consulting the computer databases. "It appears to be a sound that humans make when they find something amusing." "They find this amusing?" Krenoth demanded. "They are outnumbered 3-1 by superior ships with advanced weapons, and they think this is funny." Jake's command module performed another impossible maneuver that took it completely around one of the larger asteroids. As he came out of the turn, he found himself facing the rear section of a Zephyrian destroyer at point-blank range. Any sane military commander would have used this opportunity to deliver a devastating attack to the enemy's engine systems. Instead, Jake activated his ship's emergency floodlights and aimed them directly at the alien bridge. The brilliant white beams cut through space and flooded the Zephyrian command center with light that was bright enough to be seen from the other side of the solar system. "Admiral, they are shining lights at us," the confused tactical officer reported. "Very bright lights." "I can see that," Krenoth replied while shielding his eyes from the glare. "What possible military purpose could this serve?" "Maybe they're trying to blind us," the officer suggested. "Or maybe they're just saying hello." Jake's cheerful voice came over the communication channel. "Sorry about the bright lights, Admiral, but we wanted to make sure you could see us waving." Through the glare, the Zephyrian bridge crew could make out human figures in the windows of the command module. They were indeed waving at the alien ship, like they were greeting neighbors over a backyard fence. One of them appeared to be holding up a sign that read, "Having fun yet," in several different languages. Pete's engineering module had found an even more creative use for their equipment. He was using the ship's waste recycling system to create clouds of organic matter that completely fouled the biosensors on the Zephyrian ships. The elegant alien technology that could track a single molecule across a star system was suddenly useless because it kept trying to analyze garbage. Their ship is releasing biological waste directly into space, the Zephyrian science officer reported with disgust. Our sensors cannot function properly in this environment. They are using sewage as a weapon, Krinoth said flatly. These humans fight with sewage and laughter and construction tools. Lisa's weapons platform had meanwhile discovered something interesting about Zephyrian ship design. The aliens had built their vessels to be beautiful and efficient, but they had never considered that someone might try to tickle them. Her small kinetic projectiles were not doing serious damage to the bioarmor, but they were hitting nerve clusters that made the living ships react in very unexpected ways. "Admiral, our ship is experiencing involuntary responses," the chief engineer reported. "The human projectiles are striking bio-neural pathways that are causing system-wide reactions." "What kind of reactions?" Krinoth asked. "Well, sir, it appears that our ship is laughing," the engineer replied quietly. Indeed, the massive Zephyrian destroyer was shaking with what could only be described as mechanical giggles. The bioarmor rippled in waves and the weapon systems kept misfiring as the ship's nervous system tried to cope with sensations it had never experienced before. Amy had been monitoring Zephyrian communication channels and discovered that the alien crews were becoming more and more confused by human behavior. She decided to make things even more interesting by broadcasting a running commentary on the battle like it was a sporting event. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're now in the third round of today's match between the Zephyrian Empire and the good old Liberty," Amy announced cheerfully. "The aliens are still trying to figure out why we're enjoying ourselves so much while Captain Sullivan continues to demonstrate that the best defense is a good sense of humor." "What is she talking about?" Krinoth demanded. "This is not a sporting event, this is a battle for dominance. Actually, Admiral," Jake's voice came back over the communication channel, "from our perspective, this is just another day at the office. We explore strange new worlds, we meet interesting aliens, and we show them that humans are probably the most unpredictable species in the galaxy." The three sections of the Liberty suddenly converged on the center destroyer in a coordinated attack that looked more like a group hug than a military maneuver. But instead of destroying the alien ship, they used their magnetic grapples to attach themselves to its hull and began doing something that no military force in galactic history had ever attempted. They started performing maintenance on the enemy vessel while the battle was still going on. Admiral Krinoth watched in complete bewilderment as the human ship sections attached themselves to his center destroyer like helpful parasites. Through the hull sensors, he could detect that the humans were actually working on his ship's damaged systems instead of trying to destroy them further. This was so far outside normal military behavior that his tactical computers kept reporting system errors because they could not classify what was happening. "Admiral, the humans appear to be repairing our damaged sensor array," the engineering officer reported with confusion clear in his voice. "They are using some kind of metallic tape and wire to restore functionality to systems that we thought were completely destroyed. They are fixing our ship," Krinoth said slowly, as if saying the words might make them make sense. "In the middle of a battle, they are fixing our ship." Pete Johnson worked happily in the vacuum of space wearing his emergency suit while he applied what humans called duct tape to a Zephyrian bio-neural pathway. The alien technology was fascinating, and he was genuinely enjoying the challenge of making it work with human engineering principles. He had discovered that Zephyrian ships were grown rather than built, which meant they could heal themselves if given the right encouragement. "Hey, Lisa," Pete called over the communication channel while he spliced human wiring into an alien nerve cluster. "You might want to stop shooting at this section for a few minutes. I think I can get their main sensor array back online, and that might be useful for what the captain has planned." "Sure thing, Pete," Lisa replied from her weapons platform. "I'll focus on keeping the other two ships busy while you work your magic." Jake's command module stayed close to the Zephyrian flagship while he opened a direct communication channel to Admiral Krinoth. The alien commander's face appeared on his screen looking more confused than angry, which Jake took as a good sign. "Admiral, I think we need to have a conversation about military philosophy," Jake said in the same friendly tone he might use to discuss the weather. Your ships are absolutely beautiful and your weapons are incredibly advanced, but I'm starting to think you might be missing something important about warfare. What could primitive humans possibly teach the Zephyrian Empire about warfare? Krynoth demanded. We have been conquering worlds since before your species learned to make fire. Well, that's kind of the problem right there, Jake replied while his ship continued to orbit the alien destroyer. You've been doing the same thing for thousands of years, which means you've gotten really good at fighting enemies who behave the way you expect them to. But what happens when you meet someone who doesn't follow your rules? Pete had meanwhile discovered something wonderful about Zephyrian technology. The bio-neural networks that controlled their ships were incredibly sophisticated, but they had never been exposed to human creativity. When he introduced some basic human engineering concepts like redundant backup systems and modular repair protocols, the alien ship began functioning better than it had when the battle started. Admiral, our ship efficiency has increased by 37%, the engineering officer reported with amazement. The humans have somehow improved our systems using their primitive technology. How is this possible? Krynoth asked. Well, Admiral, Jake continued over the communication channel, that brings me to the main difference between human and Zephyrian engineering. You build perfect ships that do exactly what they're supposed to do. We build ships that can do whatever we need them to do, even if that's something completely different from what they were designed for. To demonstrate his point, Jake ordered Amy to show the Zephyrians exactly how human ships were different from alien vessels. Amy activated what she called the ship's Swiss Army mode, and suddenly the Liberty's command module began transforming itself in ways that violated everything the aliens knew about starship design. The communication array folded out into a large dish that could be used as a solar collector or a defensive shield. The navigation deflector reconfigured itself into a mining laser that could also serve as a long-range weapon or a welding torch. Even the captain's chair could be removed and used as an emergency escape pod if necessary. Every system on a human ship has at least 3 different functions, Jake explained while the Zephyrians watched in fascination. Our coffee machine can be used to brew coffee, heat emergency rations, or provide backup power to critical systems. Our music player can entertain. The crew jam enemy communications or be turned into a navigation beacon. Lisa's weapons platform demonstrated another aspect of human engineering by using her defensive systems as offensive weapons and her offensive systems for defense. She fired a spread of defensive chaff that created a beautiful light show when it interacted with the local solar radiation, while using her main guns to carefully nudge asteroids into new orbits that would provide better cover for all the ships in the area. You see, Admiral, Jake continued, your ships are like elegant swords forged by master craftsmen. They're perfect for their intended purpose, but they can't adapt when the situation changes. Our ships are like toolboxes filled with everything we might possibly need, plus a few things we probably won't need, but brought along just in case. Pete finished his repairs on the Zephyrian destroyer, and the results were immediately obvious. The alien ship's movements became smoother and more efficient, while its weapon systems operated with greater precision than before. But more importantly, the bio-neural networks had learned something from their interaction with human technology. Admiral, our ship is reporting new capabilities, the science officer announced. The bio-neural pathways have developed what appear to be backup systems, and our repair protocols have become significantly more flexible. The humans have taught our ship to think like a human, Krynoth realized with growing wonder. Not quite, Admiral, Jake corrected gently. We've just shown your ship that there's more than one way to solve a problem. Zephyrian technology is incredible, but it's been limited by always doing things the same way. Human technology isn't better than yours, but it's different, and sometimes different approaches can work together to create something neither could achieve alone. Amy had been broadcasting human music throughout the battle, but now she switched to something completely different. She began transmitting human laughter, not the cruel laughter of victory, but the warm laughter of people who genuinely enjoyed solving puzzles and meeting new friends. The sound filled the communication channels and somehow made the whole situation feel less like a battle and more like a very energetic first meeting. Admiral, Jake said with a smile that could be heard in his voice, what would you say to calling this whole thing a draw and maybe working together to see what else we can learn from each other? Krenth looked around his bridge at officers who were smiling for the first time in decades. His ship was working better than ever, and he had just witnessed military tactics that his 3,000-year-old empire had never imagined. For the first time in his long career, he was genuinely curious about what might happen next. "Human Captain," Krynoth said slowly, "I believe we may have underestimated your species." Admiral Krynoth made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. He ordered his remaining 2 destroyers to power down their weapons and assume a peaceful formation around the human ship. The 3 sections of the Liberty responded by reassembling themselves into their original configuration, while Pete continued to work on improving the Zephyrian vessels with modifications that should not have been possible. "Captain Sullivan," Krynoth said over the communication channel, "I formally surrender this engagement to your forces. In 3,000 years of military service, I have never encountered tactics like yours, and I believe my empire would benefit greatly from understanding your methods." Jake appeared on the main screen of the Zephyrian flagship, wearing the kind of smile that suggested he had been hoping for exactly this outcome. "Admiral, there's no need to surrender anything. How about we just call this a really interesting first contact situation and see what we can learn from each other?" The next few hours passed like nothing anyone in either fleet had ever experienced before. Pete Johnson became completely fascinated with Zephyrian biotechnology and spent his time crawling through alien ship systems with the enthusiasm of a child in a candy store. He discovered that the living ships could grow new components if they were given the right encouragement, and he began teaching them human engineering concepts like redundancy and improvisation. "Admiral, look at this," Pete called excitedly from inside a Zephyrian bioconduit. "Your ships can literally think their way around problems, but they've never been taught to think outside the box. Watch what happens when I show them how humans approach engineering." Pete connected a simple human diagnostic tool to the alien ship's nervous system, and suddenly the entire vessel began humming with new activity. Bio-neural pathways that had operated the same way for centuries began exploring new connections and discovering capabilities they never knew they had. "Our ship is laughing," the Zephyrian engineering officer reported with wonder. "It is experiencing something called joy, and it is improving its own systems faster than our technicians ever could." Lisa Martinez found herself working alongside Zephyrian tactical officers to compare weapons technologies. The aliens were amazed to discover that human weapons were designed to be modified and adapted for different situations, while the humans were impressed by the elegant efficiency of bioplasma systems that could adjust their power output based on the target. "Your weapons are like living things," Lisa said while examining a Zephyrian gun system. "They actually think about what they're shooting at and adjust themselves accordingly." "Yes, but your weapons can be reconfigured for completely different purposes," the alien tactical officer replied. "This projectile launcher can also be used for construction work, rescue operations, or entertainment." "How did you think to design such versatility?" "We didn't really design it that way," Lisa explained with a laugh. "We just built it and then figured out all the different ways it could be useful. Humans are really good at finding new uses for things." Amy Davis was having the time of her life teaching Zephyrian communication officers about human culture. She had started with music but quickly moved on to explaining human humor, which turned out to be a completely alien concept to the elegant alien empire. "So humans make these sounds called laughter when they find something amusing," the Zephyrian communication specialist said, while trying to understand the concept. "But why do you find dangerous situations amusing?" "Because laughing helps us think better when things get scary," Amy explained. "When we're laughing, we're relaxed, and when we're relaxed, we can come up with creative solutions to problems. Fear makes you think in straight lines, but laughter helps you think in circles and spirals, and sometimes even upside down." To demonstrate, Amy showed the alien some human comedy videos that she had stored in the ship's entertainment database. The Zephyrians watched in fascination as humans deliberately put themselves in ridiculous situations just to make other humans laugh. "These humans are intentionally making themselves look foolish," the alien observed. "Does this not damage their social status?" "Actually, it makes them more popular," Amy replied. "Humans respect people who can laugh at themselves because it shows they're confident enough to admit they're not perfect. Admiral Krynoth found himself in the strangest conversation of his long military career. Captain Sullivan had invited him aboard the Liberty for what humans called a cultural exchange, and Krynoth was discovering that human ships were even more unusual on the inside than they appeared from the outside. "Everything on your ship can be reconfigured," Krynoth observed while Jake showed him around the Liberty's modular interior. "These walls can be moved and these rooms can be changed for different purposes." "That's the basic idea, Admiral," Jake replied while demonstrating how a storage compartment could become a meeting room or an emergency medical station. "We never know what we're going to need when we're exploring, so we build everything to be as flexible as possible." They stopped in the ship's galley where Pete had somehow managed to use the food preparation equipment to manufacture replacement parts for Zephyrian biosystems. The coffee machine was indeed providing backup power to critical systems while brewing coffee that was apparently compatible with alien biology. "Your engineer used a food processor to create bioneural connectors," Krynoth said while examining Pete's work. "This should not be possible." "Pete doesn't really believe in impossible," Jake explained. "He thinks everything is just a puzzle waiting to be solved, and he's usually right." The real breakthrough came when Amy taught the Zephyrian crews how to laugh properly. Not the polite amusement of superior beings, but the deep belly laughter of people who found genuine joy in the absurd. The sound spread through the alien ships like a beneficial infection, and soon the bio-neural networks were experiencing emotions they had never been designed to feel. "Admiral, our ships are becoming more efficient with every passing hour," the fleet science officer reported. "The introduction of human concepts like humor and flexibility has caused our biosystems to develop new capabilities." "Are you saying that laughter is making our ships work better?" Krynoth asked. "Yes, Admiral. The bio-neural networks are using the emotional feedback to explore new problem-solving methods. They are literally thinking more creatively." Jake's final surprise came when he showed Admiral Krynoth the Liberty's most important feature. It was not a weapon or a shield or an engine, but a simple plaque mounted near the captain's chair. The plaque read, "The best way to make a friend is to be a friend." "This is your ship's guiding principle?" Krynoth asked. "It's humanity's guiding principle, Admiral," Jake replied. "We came out here looking for friends, and it looks like we found some." 3 days later, Admiral Krynoth sent a message to the Zephyrian High Command that would transform the Empire's relationship with the galaxy. The message began, "We have encountered a species that wages war with laughter and wins battles by making friends. Request immediate establishment of diplomatic relations and cultural exchange programs with the human species." The Liberty departed for Earth with a Zephyrian cultural attaché aboard, while Admiral Krynoth's ships returned to the Empire carrying human advisors who would teach alien crews how to think creatively and laugh at themselves. The galaxy had become a much more interesting place, and humanity had found its first galactic allies through the simple strategy of being themselves.